Hi, I'm Xtina from Medway Fine Printmakers in Rochester, and for Medway Print Festival I'll be doing several tutorials on printmaking methods that you can do at home. So for this tutorial I'm going to show you how to do a relief printing method using cereal packets and a wooden spoon. So I'm going to show you first of all what you need in order to do this technique, and then I'll do a demo. Relief printing, it's like linocut. Linocut is a relief printing method. You have a surface, a block, and then you carve away parts of that surface, and it's the bit that's left that you print, the top surface. So it's like that with the cereal packets, but you cut out shapes, so you actually completely remove the areas that aren't going to be printed, whereas linocut, it just kind of makes those surfaces lower. So you can do things that are quite complicated, like this one. I cut this one out using a craft knife and a cutting mat just to get all of those little details in there. But you can also do quite simple ones, just cut out with scissors. And one of the important things is that it has a shiny surface to it, so this works much better if you choose those thin card packaging materials that have a plastic laminated coating to them. So this actually uses the cutouts in two ways. So the background's done using it as a stencil, so I'll show you that method too. And the black kind of prints here are done with a cutout that's inked up, and then you have it in place and you burnish it in the reverse with the spoon, and then when you peel it off, your ink will be in wherever the stencil was, wherever the card was. So you can combine those two techniques if you like, or you can just go for the cutouts. So I'll just run through the things that you need. Cereal packets or packaging, like I say, that's got a shiny surface to it. Some paper. The best paper for this is if you choose something quite smooth and fairly thin. So you can use just normal photocopy printer paper. If you get one that's a little bit thicker, you might get a slightly better result. And this is like a smooth, thin cartridge that I'm using. A wooden spoon for doing the actual printing part, doing the burnishing. It's probably best if you use the wooden spoon that then is only going to be used for printmaking. So don't grab the best wooden spoon in the house. Some scrap paper, so anything that's just got a few marks on it that you don't really care about. Little wedge of newspaper. Scissors or a craft knife for doing the cutting out. A pencil is useful because you can draw your design on the matte side of the card before you cut out if you want to. And then if you're doing the background stenciling, then just some cheap foam roll, sponge foam rollers from Wilkinson's or somewhere, pound shop like that, and some acrylic paint, just any acrylic water-based paint you can use for that. But that's not going to work very well for the relief printing transfer method because it gets stuck to it very easily, it dries very quickly. So for that we'll be using a relief printing ink that's got an oil base. So this one is made by Cranfield. It's called Caligo SafeWash relief ink. Any relief ink will do, but this is a particularly nice one. It washes up with water, so much like the etching tutorial where we used a water-based, water wash-up, oil-based ink. This is a good choice for this one too. So you can buy this in much smaller tubes than this. This is just what I use in the studio because we get through a lot of it. So relief ink, and for that as well a rubber roller. You could possibly use the sponge rollers if you don't have one of these, but you'll get a better result with a nice, I quite like these blue ones, they're a little bit softer. And then we've got plastic sheets. It's just going to be used for our palette for rolling out our ink. So you could use a plate, or you could use a tile, or even a glossy magazine might work. But I like scrap pieces of plastic that we use for lots of different things in the studio. a couple of cloths, so one wet one dry one. Helps keep your fingers and everything clean as you're working, and I think that's it. So once you've assembled those things, you can have a go, and I'm just going to run through this process with you. So we're going to set up to do the stencil part of this technique, so you can skip this if you don't want these colourful backgrounds. I'm just going to use some acrylic paint and squeeze a bit out at the top. Not overly fond of that particular green, so I'm going to mix a bit of yellow in with it. And a bit of violet over here. And because it's quite warm, I want to slow this down the drying time, so I'm going to add a little bit of print medium. So this is a gluey kind of substance that you buy. It's called print medium, and you just buy it from an art shop, and it just means that it doesn't dry quite so quickly as you're working, gives you a bit more time to work. So mix that together. This is just some cut off bits of Tetra Pak that I'm using to spread this out. You could use a butter knife or something like that. Mix those together, and I'm doing this at the top of the palette so that I've got lots of room to roll out my ink. It's going to blend a bit as you roll it out as well, so you don't have to be too perfect with this mixing. Okay, so when you're rolling out the ink, you roll into the ink and bring a bit of it further down, but just keep lifting the roller up so that you're able to spread it out properly. If you just use the roller in and out of the ink, it will just take it to the same place all the time if you don't lift up, whereas if you lift up it will spread it across the palette. So you want to go backwards and forwards just to get it so it's quite smooth and even. Do that one a little bit more. Looks a bit too thick still. You only need it quite nice and thin. So I'm putting some scrap paper underneath just in case I go over the edge, which is quite likely. And I can use some of my cut out shapes. So these are just, I'm not going to show you how to do this because I'm pretty sure you can work it out. Just draw on pencil and then cut out shapes. And I'm looking for, actually it doesn't, at this stage it doesn't really matter too much with which side you're using. It's the relief printing that's going to be important for the which side you're using, shiny side. So I'm just going to take some of this ink, lay my shape down and just roll it over the top. So it's really just stenciling, but using the same shapes that you might use in your relief printing. It works best with bold shapes because it would be quite hard, even with thin card, to get into all of the little cut out shapes you might have done in a more complicated block. So just doing several of these on the same bit of paper. Trying to stay away from the other one a little bit so I don't roller too much into that area. You can end up kind of just obliterating what you've done before if you go over the top of it in the same colour. Okay, so now I'm going to ink up for the relief printing of the cereal box parts. So this is Cranfield relief ink. And just gonna try not to get this all over my fingers as I'm taking the lid off. Same business as before. Don't need an awful lot of this ink, and we'll roll it out in the same way. You keep lifting that roller up as you want to spread it over the plate. So you hear much more of a hiss with this ink, and you really don't want, I haven't put too much out to begin with, but you really don't want it to be too loud a hiss. You want to spread it out a bit more if it's hissing too much, because if you can see the texture of the ink, you've really got too much on there, so it should be much less hissy and look quite nice and even. So just leave that there a sec. So this is the plate that I'm going to be working with. So making sure that I'm working with the shiny side. On this one, the printed side is actually more matte than the white side. So I'm going to ink up that shiny side. So I'm going to have to hold part of it to stop it from moving around. So I'm going to start at the top here and just ink all over the whole thing. And you want to go over several times just to build up enough ink on there. Some of my hair detail there are overlapping each other, so I want to make sure that there's ink on all of these parts. So hold it there, and if I ink in this direction, hopefully I'll get to it all. So those bits are just proving a little bit fiddly. Got them, I think. So I'm going to roll her over this because I just touched it, so I'll get a fingerprint on that. So trying to get the whole thing. And one of the prints from before. So this is where the having a shiny surface is going to help, because it stops it from getting stuck on the water-based ink. So I'm just pressing that down into place. And then what you need is your newspaper. So if you have a little wedge of newspaper like this, and it might be useful as well to put some other scrap paper around so you're not transferring ink about. But so I'm going to flip this over so that we've got the newspaper underneath, and then we've got the paper on top of the plate. So you could use a wooden spoon. My favourite one though is this horn one. You're just rubbing all over, making sure that the plate doesn't move around underneath. Just holding it in place. You might get a few marks on the back like this one. Didn't quite clean my fingers properly there. Just give it a really good rub all over. Try different like circular and up and down motions just to kind of get it really good and pressed in, and then you can have a sneaky peek to see how it's going, and anything else that needs a bit more work you can go in and finish those bits off, holding it in place, pressing really quite hard. There we go. So that's your relief print over the top of a stencil print. This is from a series, I think, of different nature goddesses in the garden. So have a go and see how you get on.